Insurance fraud in the UK is reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds every year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems.
There's a subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques. And highly skilled, dedicated police units. They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those conmen, scammers and cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Today, the Met Traffic Unit collars some suspected fraudsters on an early morning raid.
Do you work here, though?
I don't work here.
You seem quite at home. You're caught up and things.
A lost dog at the centre of a pet insurance claim makes a remarkable comeback.
Another local vet has just contacted me for the veterinary history of that dog that supposedly was washed off the cliff because it's just been registered with them.
And a crash for cash gang is caught out trying to tangle with a truck.
Experience tells you when you're viewing footage that some things are not quite right.
This busy station is in Middlesbrough, in the northeast of England. Thousands of passengers pass through its bustling foyer every day. In the summer of 2011, it was the scene of a dangerous accident that led to a large insurance claim. Here's the man in question, moments before he fell and suffered serious injury. Lee Ingram from First Group's Transportation Claims Division worked on the case.
He's alleging that as he is walking across the foyer, he has tripped in a gap, which he is describing as a defect on the floor, fallen over and injured himself. The gentleman is alleging that from this particular trip, he has sustained injuries to his head, causing an open head wound. Subsequently, he's then alleging that he has sustained dizzy spells and succumbed to headaches. This is some 2 months after the incident. He's still got headaches and suffering from dizziness.
His ongoing health problems indicated that this had been no minor accident.
He's describing a traumatic head injury. Head injuries are always something we would be concerned about. Often concussion is not immediately apparent to the person who sustained the concussion. Head injuries can also lead to cognitive issues which will impair function, possible speech issues, and maybe loss of short-term or long-term memory. So they're always something we will investigate seriously.
It was a potentially life-changing injury. But when Transportation Claims went to call up the accident report, they found that there wasn't one.
The gentleman concerned alleges that he did not report this particular incident to anyone because the station ticket office was closed and there was no one around for him to report to at the time.
It was clear that the case needed further investigation. Luckily, the station is covered by CCTV, and the cameras had captured everything from that evening. Immediately before the accident, the man is seen to cross the foyer. He then falls over in a dramatic manner.
When you see what has transpired in this particular footage, it makes you suddenly start thinking, well, this is a bit strange.
What they saw on camera made Lee and his team suspicious.
And you would expect in this type of fall for someone to fall forward quite quickly. The first reaction when you take a fall like that is to put your arms out to break your fall. We don't see that in this situation.
Instead, the footage raises serious questions.
We see the chap immediately going to hold his head before he hits the fall, suggesting that he may well be trying to break his fall because he knew it was coming.
What's more, the footage shows numerous other passengers encountering no difficulty with the alleged defect in the floor tiling.
We see around about 15 people walking over, around and across, some people even standing in the actual area where this person is alleging he's tripped. Just the sheer number that walk over it would suggest it wasn't the issue that the claimant is making it out to be.
And the discrepancies didn't stop there. The claimant alleged that he didn't report the incident because there were no station staff around, but this was disproved.
When you look at the footage, you will see a number of people wearing high-vis jackets, which would have been station employees that he could have reported this particular fall to.
But that's not all that's revealed by the footage. Perhaps the most telling piece of evidence was right at the beginning of the tape. A little girl is seen scooting around the foyer.
And at one stage, she runs over the tile, dislodging one of the tiles. She stops a little bit further on, turns round, and goes and replaces the tile where it's come from, obviously showing that there is a loose tile in the foyer.
Significantly, this all happens within view of the claimant.
Preceding the fall, you will see the gentleman walk towards the defect, take a deliberate look at it, walk on past it, lengthening his stride so he can actually step over the area in question. He then walks towards the foyer, he turns round at the stairs, walks back towards the area, and you can visibly see him deviate to the left so that he can place his right foot deliberately into the area concerned. He does stumble forward as if his legs have been taken away from him. I think he's given a great performance. He possibly could have won awards for that.
Transportation Claims felt they had all the evidence they needed to strike out the claimant's demand for compensation. They sent the CCTV to the claimant's solicitors and waited for a response.
2 years on, we've still not had a response from them as to whether they're withdrawing their claim, so we'll take it as read that they actually are. For him to think he can get away with this sort of thing is quite naive and bordering on ridiculous.
A dodgy vet is caught cashing in on treatments for pets that never existed.
The only element of truth was the fact that the vet who was submitting the invoices for this expensive treatment was a real vet.
A Met Traffic Unit raid on an accident management company turns up a truckload of potential evidence.
There are multiple registration documents, hundreds and hundreds of insurance claim forms, the usual mobile phones that are used in the claims. Basically, it's a gold mine.
This is the home of the Met Traffic Unit. Set up in 2010, this specialist department is dedicated to reducing the number of traffic-related deaths, injuries and crimes on the streets of the capital.
We search for people who are wanted for serious offences. My team have made 300 arrests in the last 2.5 years, which is around about 50 operations. Every one of those operations will have resulted in a prosecution.
Their aim is to make our roads as safe as possible. Criminal gangs operating insurance scams are responsible for the rise of a terrifying new danger on our roads: crash for cash. DI Dave Hindmarsh of the Met Traffic Unit is once again spearheading the initiative to stop the gangs in their tracks.
You have the most serious types of cash for crash, which is the induced collision. And this is primarily where criminal gang members go out onto the roads with two cars. They'll drive in tandem looking for their victim. They'll position themselves in front, and then the decoy car, which will be the lead car, will brake hard. That gives the middle car, the one that they want to be damaged, a reason to brake, catch their victim out, and they'll run into the back. And that is a typical cash for crash scenario. The insurance industry have estimated that it costs them somewhere in the range of £392 million per year, but I think it's probably bigger than that. It is an extremely dangerous way of earning some money because you are putting innocent members of the public at risk. Cash for crash gangs will target commercial vehicles for the simple reason is they're insured. They know they're going to be insured, and that's what they want. They don't want to cause a crash with someone who might not be insured.
Because fraudsters go after commercial fleet vehicles, some insurance companies like Towergate have taken the innovative step of supplying fleet vehicles with forward-facing cameras.
That is one of the cameras that we use. As you can see, it's quite small, and we sight them behind the rearview mirror.
But it's not the size that's important.
Towergate introduced them as a method of determining legal liability following an accident. We see what the driver sees.
The cameras certainly proved their worth in the case of a collision on a busy A road in July 2010. One of their vehicles had hit the car in front, It sounded like a standard rear-end shunt, but the footage revealed something more sinister. They passed it to DI Hindmarsh.
In the footage, what you see is a blue Mercedes and a black VW Golf. The black VW Golf is the decoy car, the car that's there to give the blue Mercedes a reason to brake. And effectively, the footage shows the two vehicles manoeuvring themselves in front of the lorry, and at the last moment, the black Golf brakes hard, turns left into a side road, causing the blue Mercedes to brake and stop, and the lorry crashes into the back with some significant rear damage.
Experience tells you when you're viewing footage that some things are not quite right.
It's quite a large impact. Now, the people involved in this are almost stunt drivers, because I've watched that bit of footage several times, and at the last moment, just before impact, the driver of the Mercedes comes off the brakes and turns the steering wheel to the left. So therefore, he is hit, but he's almost pushed out of the way and round the corner rather than being pushed into incoming traffic.
The shocking footage had actually captured a crash for cash gang in action, and the investigation eventually uncovered a huge web of criminality stretching across the country.
The decoy car, the black Golf that you see in the footage, the driver came from Luton. The Mercedes that you see getting damaged, the owner of that car lives in London. One of the passengers in the car lived in Manchester, and the claims management company that were going to handle some of the aspect of this claim were in South Yorkshire.
The Met Traffic Unit investigated the main players seen in the footage.
We knew who the owner of the Mercedes was, and it was a matter of finding out who his associates were. Ansab Rizwan was the managing director of an accident management company in Yorkshire. His brother, Isham Gondal, was a passenger in the Mercedes, and Tariq Mahmood, we identified, was the driver of the decoy car.
Dave Hindmarsh and his team had enough evidence to launch a full-scale investigation.
It resulted in the accident management company in Yorkshire being the subject of a search warrant, and we searched the premises and took all the files. That highlighted a number of other collisions in London, Manchester, and around the sort of the Luton, Bedfordshire area.
The suspects were arrested, and the case eventually came to court.
They all pleaded guilty. Tariq Mahmood was seen as the most serious of the people concerned. You know, he was the one that had caused the crashes at the end of the day. He got 12 months imprisonment. Ansab Rizwan and his brother Isham Gondal, they received suspended sentences and 180 hours unpaid work. And Nasser Khan, who was the gentleman who had allowed his car to be used, he received a community order as a result. So people who previously hadn't been in trouble with the police before have now got criminal records, and some have gone to prison.
The sentences reflected the seriousness of the crime.
Crash for cash at the end of the day risks injuring innocent people in a staged road accident.
It's a very real danger. In February 2013, a gang was jailed for their role in the tragic death of a young woman caught up in a crash for cash accident.
If a lot more commercial vehicles and even private cars were fitted with cameras, it would be a massive use to ourselves and the insurance companies.
We think of the UK as a nation of animal lovers, but unscrupulous fraudsters are exploiting our furry friends in order to line their pockets. Disturbing figures from the Association of British Insurers show pet insurance fraud quadrupled from £420,000 in 2009 to almost £2 million in 2010. Simon Wheeler is Managing Director of Agria Pet Insurance. He reviewed a claim for a payout for a missing dog.
It was a Staffordshire Bull Terrier. It was nearly 4 years old.
The claimant contacted the company to explain what had happened to the poor pooch.
The policyholder and the dog had been in Cornwall, near the seaside, and the dog had been washed out to sea off a rock, and that was the last the policyholder saw of the dog. This is quite obviously traumatic for the owner, because in the claim form she was very upset and the dog had been washed out to sea in front of her eyes and she hadn't got it back.
Despite the heartbreak of losing the dog, the policyholder would receive a silver lining in the form of a payout and promptly sent through the documentation in support of the claim.
The claim form was completed by the policyholder, and the full veterinary section was completed as well by her local vet.
As part of the claims procedure, Agria contacted the veterinary practice associated with the dog to check the animal had been registered with them and that the vet who signed the form worked there.
The veterinary practice instantly said, yes, this is one of our patients, and that this vet works at the practice. That vet at the time who had signed the claim form was on holiday when we contacted them, though. Nothing really led us to suggest that there was fraudulent activity on this claim, and indeed we settled the claim. Fairly low value for £300.
But then Agria were contacted by the vet who had just returned from her holiday.
She was pretty confident that she hadn't filled out the claim form, she hadn't signed the claim form, because as far as she was concerned, if she couldn't identify the pet and that the pet had died, she wouldn't have signed a veterinary certificate to say that it had died.
The claim form was faxed through to the vet who confirmed that it wasn't her signature and pointed out another discrepancy.
The practice stamp that had been included on the claim form actually wasn't their practice stamp. So more than likely the policyholder had a stamp made up to add that level of authenticity to the claim.
It seemed clear that Agria was dealing with a fraudulent claim. Although they'd gone to some lengths to create a genuine-looking form, they had totally underestimated the insurer's determination to stamp out fraud.
We went back to the policyholder and said, we believe you're acting fraudulently, we've been in contact with the veterinary practice, and they didn't complete this claim form at all. Very shortly afterwards, we got a cheque in the post from the policyholder for the £300, a letter of explanation to say that somebody in the policyholder's household had completed the claim form and submitted it fraudulently.
But the whole shaggy dog story didn't end there. 4 months later, Agria were contacted again by the dog's vet, who had uncovered a staggering new development.
She rang up and said, you're not going to believe this. Another local vet has just contacted me for the veterinary history of that dog that supposedly was washed off the cliff because it's just been registered with them.
It appeared that the dog had never been washed off a rock and drowned. It was alive and well and had just registered with a new vet. It's one thing for owners to attempt to pull the wool over insurers' eyes, but what really gives pause for thought is the behaviour of dishonest vets. Detective Constable Alex Cooley from IFED, the City of London's Police Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, worked on one such case. His team was alerted to a pet insurance claim for veterinary work that appeared suspicious.
We first received a referral from one of the insurance companies who had spotted the discrepancy between the work being claimed for by the vet and the fact that that type of work wasn't carried out by that particular practice.
It didn't add up, and IFED carried out further inquiries.
And we identified another insurance company who had 4 suspicious claims coming from the same vet.
The man in question was Francisco Cruz, a vet working at a practice in Norfolk.
We were looking at 5 claims in total involving both cats and dogs who were alleged to have chewed pieces of plastic, leading to medical difficulties and requiring expensive surgery. So, on average, the claims were coming out at about £2,500.
The fact that all 5 claims were for a type of surgery that didn't take place at Cruz's workplace seemed suspicious, but more evidence was needed. When they looked into the identities of the policyholders, it seemed that they had the proof that they were after.
The names that he was using were a sort of hodgepodge of members of his close family, but also his friends and even children of his friends. Couldn't detect any particular reason behind that other than sort of imaginative laziness.
It turned out that every detail about the claims was false, even the pets themselves.
The only element of truth was the fact that the vet was a real vet. So the vet was forging his own invoices in respect of work which was never carried out. And then he was making claims against the policies that he had totally made up concerning these fake pets.
Cruz was abusing his position as a vet to pass off fake claims, but he hadn't covered his tracks, and the IFED team had enough evidence to arrest him. Cruz's motivation was clearly financial.
And in order to pay off certain debts, he was making a fake claim at about a rate of one every year. In total, he made £10,000 from his offending.
The case eventually reached court, and Cruz was found guilty. He was sentenced to a suspended 8-month jail term, 200 hours community service, and ordered to pay £10,000 compensation. But perhaps the greatest cost is to Cruz's professional reputation. Gordon Hockey is head of legal services at the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, the body that regulates every vet in the UK.
All vets on becoming members make a declaration, in effect, to put the animals and the public first. And where veterinary surgeons are dishonest, commit insurance fraud, that's clearly not putting animals first and not putting the public first. And so it is taken seriously by the college. The vast majority of vets are law-abiding and are honest. So this happens very rarely. The most severe sanction that the RCVS can impose on a veterinary surgeon is to take their name off the register, to strike them off the register, which means that they can't practice and they therefore can't earn a living as a veterinary surgeon.
Today, the Metropolitan Police Traffic Unit has assembled for a briefing about a raid they're about to carry out on an accident management company.
Basically, Operation is around the accident management company. The Insurance Fraud Bureau have identified several claims which can be described as suspicious circumstances. We need to do a bit of investigation into the legitimacy of the claims that seem to be handling.
They've been given a tip-off by the Insurance Fraud Bureau.
Basically, today the intention will be to execute a search warrant at the address.
Accident management companies process claims on behalf of victims of road traffic accidents. They organise hire vehicles, refer cases to lawyers, and manage personal injury claims. Unfortunately, there are many examples of accident management companies acting fraudulently by inventing or inflating claims. The Met Traffic Unit is planning to execute a search warrant on the premises of an accident management company in the hope of collecting evidence to support their case of suspected fraud. Once they've arrived at the location, they identify the premises and then move in as quickly as possible to make sure no one escapes or tries to hide vital evidence.
Hello, mate. Got any ID on it? Yeah. Okay.
The first thing they do is ask everyone for ID. The officers need to work out who's a client and who's an employee. But some of the people in the office appear to be holding back.
I know how old I am. Why don't you know how old you are?
Not 32 then.
You're sure you're 32?
Yeah, 32.
Yeah, you're not going to change it?
No.
No? Okay.
Others seem to be confused about their role at the company.
What's your position here?
Yeah, it's my brother's company.
It's your brother's company?
Yeah.
But do you work here, though?
I don't work
You
here.
seem quite at home with your coat off and stuff like that. You seem quite at home with your coat off and things.
I'm looking after him.
After who?
I'm looking after my brother's work.
Oh, you're looking after... So you do work here?
Yeah, sometime I come
Well,
here.
that's what I said. I said you work here.
No,
You said no.
I don't work.
Yeah.
I sometimes come here, see the things.
The traffic unit needs to speak to the owner, but he isn't in the office and has left his brother in charge.
It's just that I class this as what you've said as working here.
Sorry?
I class what you said as you working here.
No, I'm
You're
not
not just a
working.
person that's just coming off the street, are you?
No.
No, that's the point I'm trying to
No
say, yeah?
problem, no
Yeah, we'll let you keep things simple, all right? It just takes longer if we don't.
No problem.
Do you understand that, yeah?
Eventually, everyone has been checked and identified, and most are allowed to leave. The job of collecting evidence can now get underway. As the team go through the premises, the sheer size of the task becomes apparent. The office is stuffed full of cupboards and filing cabinets.
It's one of the offices at the moment. Eventually we'll be taking all the files out and we'll look at it at a later stage. When we've got a bit more time to spread it all out, we can't do it at the scene. It's just totally impractical.
Yeah, basically we're just systematically going through, bagging up all the property, so we don't miss anything, and obviously for continuity as well. It does take a bit of time, but it's something which has got to be done properly.
Yes.
7 mobile telephones.
The mobile phones could be an important piece of evidence for a number of reasons.
You can get lots of details off them. You can link them into different collisions, different false claims, and you can also get an idea of who's working here and whose phone it ultimately belongs to. Obviously, once they've been examined, then we'll find out exactly what their involvement is. It may well be quite innocent, but you don't normally find bags of mobile phones lying around.
The owner of the company belatedly arrives at the scene.
The guy sitting behind me with a baseball cap is in fact the owner of the premises. He's heard what's been going on because obviously his brother was here when we first entered the premises, and he's obviously come along to see what's going on, see us taking away his business.
It's important to follow up all the suspected evidence, and that includes keys to cars being stored or used for hire.
Everything centres around the fact that some of the claims for car hires, car hiring, storage and that are believed to be fraudulent, so any of the vehicles are probably part of that as well. They're part of the overall potentially criminal enterprise that we're looking at. 30 keys here, but there could be more.
So far, DC Tony Reckier is pleased with how well the raid is going.
Well, we basically found things that we were looking for. There are multiple registration documents, hundreds and hundreds of insurance claim forms, the usual mobile phones that are used in the claims. Basically, it's a gold mine.
DI Dave Hindmarsh has arrived at the location to oversee proceedings.
The team have come down to execute a search warrant, and as a result there's been a large amount of property seized from the premises. The intention is a lorry will arrive and we will load all of the seized property onto the lorry, and in our leisure we will sift through it to see which bits are evidence and which bits are not.
The team isn't taking any chances and has seized a huge volume of potential evidence, leaving the office practically bare.
It's been several months in the planning to get to the stage that we are now, meticulously looking through records and investigating in the background before we came out today.
The challenge is now to take it away safely.
4 crates, that's exactly what we're dealing with here, loads of property.
Once the crates are full, the team moves on to the next stage in the process.
They're just heat shrinking the packages to ensure the continuity and integrity of the exhibits. If they're heat shrinked at the scene, it's all documented. Nobody will say that it's been tampered with or anything's been added or taken away. It's all been documented what's gone in. So it's a good way of keeping stuff together. It will stay that way until they get opened and re-examined at a later stage.
It's a really satisfying moment, this, watching all the bags being sealed up. We've got 2 large crates that have been sealed up now, and 3 filing cabinets all full of files.
The sheer volume of work that's needed to trawl through the suspected evidence is proof of the Met Traffic Unit's commitment to stamping out fraud. They'll stop at nothing to make our roads safe.